Hi everyone, I'm James Bell with ERA Four Feathers Realty, and welcome back to my channel. As a realtor in Arizona, I want to make sure that you guys understand the terms and processes that shape all of these transactions we're going to be involved in. So we're continuing my web series on AAR forms and what they mean. Today we're going to be diving into consent to limited representation, also known as dual agency. Now this concept's important when you're acting as a representative for both buyer and seller. So let's break that down. Dual agency happens when the same real estate agent or broker represents both the buyer and seller in the same transaction. Now, typically, we see dual agency in transactions when both the buyer's agent and the seller's agent are in the same brokerage. They're not necessarily the same individual agent. And this might sound a little tricky, but with clear rules, it can work smoothly for everyone involved. Now, just like with all things, there are pros and cons to this type of representation. So first, let's talk about why dual agency exists. And it's often used in situations where both the buyer and seller agree that having the same agent or brokerage represent them can help streamline the process. But there are important guidelines to follow to ensure fairness. So let's get into this form. In the form, lines 1 through 4 are just the names of the agents, the name of the individuals buying and selling, the brokerage, the property. So that's pretty standard. 5 through 8 is consent to use one or two agents listed by name, and lines 9 through 25 explain those duties and limitations. So, what does dual agency mean for you? As a dual agent, I cannot fully advocate for one party over another. My role is more about facilitating the transaction. I have to be neutral and fair, ensuring that both parties are aware of everything that's going on, but I cannot disclose confidential information from either side unless given written permission. The agent or agents in this transaction will still exercise reasonable skill and care in the performance of their duties and are obligated at all times to deal honestly with all parties. Simply put, when I represent a client whom has agreed to limited representation and we are in a contract with dual agency, I cannot advise or advocate for them. I'll become more of a time and form manager, ensuring that the correct forms are turned in on time rather than my typical level of involvement and usual role of providing guidance and advocacy. So that would be some of the cons of having limited representation dual agency. The pros are that we can typically get your home sold faster. Instead of hosting open houses, contacting multiple brokerages, having some home tours at the MLS meetings, I can just ask another agent in my office if they have a buyer for this home that I have. And most times in a smaller office, we know what each other's doing and we know what each other's working on already. So we have a general idea of the needs and demands of clients, and we can help match buyers to sellers much easier and faster. So imagine this scenario. I get a new client, and as I'm typing up this new listing into the MLS to go live, my colleague asks me, "Hey, James, what are you working on?" I tell him about the house my client has and that they've agreed to limited representation. And in that moment, they can turn around and call one of their clients to inform them that the dream home that they've been looking for is going on the market in a few hours. Would they like to see it before anyone else even knows about it? Now, that's your biggest advantage and the biggest reason to go with limited representation. It is a skill, and it is a skill that needs to be nurtured and grown. So, now here's the tricky part: conflicts of interest. As a dual agent, you're going to be walking a fine line. You need to treat both the buyer and the seller fairly without disclosing any sensitive details like pricing expectations unless both parties say it's okay in writing. To be clear, I cannot put the needs of one client above another in that type of transaction. In Arizona, a dual agent does not change what the broker has to disclose. So if there are any material facts about the property, like structural issues, legal problems, things like that, that could either affect the party's decision, the agent still has to share those. Now, it's important to remember that dual agency is not for everyone. If you choose to go this route, both the buyer and seller must give informed consent, and everyone has to understand what dual agency means, including its limitations, hence why this form exists in the first place. Now, line 26 is going to be in reference to compensation, and this is always negotiable. Let me move the form down. So, Lines 26 is compensation, and again, it's always negotiable. It's not set by any state, federal agency. It's not set by any organization, not NAR, not WeServe, nothing like that. That's a conversation between the brokerage, the agent, and the buyer or seller. So lines 30 through 32 is termination. So if either party decides not to move forward and this contract falls through, the dual agency agreement will end. The dual agency only exists while under contract. So if that particular contract for that particular property dissolves, me and my client will return to our normal agency where I can advise and advocate. Lines 33 through 35 is an indemnification clause that will hold myself and my brokerage harmless from any damages or liability that may have arisen during this limited representation. Lines 36 and 39 is the signature block and the acknowledgement that the undersigned understands all the above information. So, that is your consent to limited representation form. To sum it up, dual agency can be an efficient way to handle a transaction, but it requires transparency, clear consent, and neutral representation from your agent. And it is vital that both parties understand the boundaries and limitations of this type. So, if this video has helped clear up what dual agency is, how it works, don't forget to hit the like button, subscribe, and tune in for more videos on my channel. Thank you so much. Have a great day.